Ladies and gentlemen, the CEO and Executive Editor of Rappler, Ms. Maria Angelito Ressa.
Now you have an idea I'm old, right? And I am. Please sit. I love it. You've got your phones. Thank you so much for such a wonderful introduction, which always makes me nervous. Mayor Cayetano, the officials of DepEd, thank you for having me come speak today to the students who are the future of journalism. I want to talk to you. This is a time of such dramatic change. You know, this is my 30th year as a journalist, so it is not a joke when I say that I was a journalist before you were born. Pero mukha namang bata pa naman, di ba? And your power on social media is actually now transforming the industry that I work in. Let me take it from the beginning, and I'll show you exactly how technology is changing everything and how you can use your power now, even before you graduate, to actually hold public and private sector accountable. Not just that, forget those words, to make your family and your lives better. You can do it now, and that is the promise. It's called Lessons from the Warzone because I used to be a Warzone correspondent when I was younger, before I came home and to join ABS-CBN. But you know, the Warzone is not just in a war zone. When you're a journalist, the Warzone is everyday life. And I'll take it from this. So look at how fast things are changing, right? From the very beginning, there we go. So I became a journalist a little bit before 1986, and this is what I used. I can see all your phones and your cameras. Wala kaming ganito, wala kaming Google. Grabe ang hirap. Kailangan sulatin lahat. We wrote everything down, and if I was covering this event, I would have to click and then run and find a payphone. San kaya may payphone dito? Or to go to the office, maybe to the office of the mayor, or to anywhere nearby so I can call. That's what happened. So you wrote and then you called. Those were the payphones. So I became a journalist in New York City first, and there was a payphone every 2 blocks. But now you hold everything in your hand. When I came back to the Philippines in 1986, this is what I found inside PTV4 after the fall of Marcos, right? So I walked into the PTV4 and I found this. I'd never typed on a manual typewriter before, and I learned massive risk action yan. Then, by 1987, look at what happened. That popped up. And then, later that same year, this next thing happened. This was magic to me because at that point, I was already working for CNN, and I could print out my script, I'd pass it through this fax machine, and then it would come out in New York or in Atlanta. My editor would change the script and then send it back, and it's instantaneous. It was magic, magic to me. Now, one of our 20-somethings from Rappler looked at it and said, "Ma'am, ano po yan?" Historic archive na siya ngayon. Fax machine, tandaan niyo po yun. Fax machine siya dati. Next one. And then, back then, the journalists had this thing. Easy call, pocket bell, yung mga may edad, katulad ko. Natatandaan pa rin ito, di ba? And you know what we had to do? You would wear this, and then it would be, if you got a message, you would have to go call the number, then tell the operator what your pager number is, then the operator would read the message to you. And then you would have to do the whole thing over again to get a message back. Look at the difference between that and text messaging. And then finally, the last one. This was a little bit later, but at the end of 1987, CNN sent me a big box. It was that big, right? Here. And it had a strap so I could put it on my shoulder and carry it. That was the very first cell phone. Ang laki niya! And you had to take it off the top and then put it to your ear. And the cell phone was as big as from here all the way down. Now, you can carry 2 cell phones on your pocket, right? And here's the thing. If you have an iPhone, that has more supercomputing power than the Watson, the computer that took a city block in New York City in the late 80s. That's incredible stuff, and you have that power. The next. So we went to a war zone when I was much younger. We could go away for 2 weeks at a time, and I would report from conflict. No one would hear from you. You would never hear from your editor, and it was good. You had 2 weeks to do a story. 2 weeks. That is a generation in our age today. Now online, 10 stories per reporter maybe. An investigative report maybe 1 every day or 1 every 2 days. I miss these days. We could disappear and it was great fun. You could talk to everyone. You had time to talk to everyone. Ngayon medyo mas mabilis siya, and that means journalists make mistakes, right? How do we deal with that? By admitting that journalists are not perfect. And here's the last part. Who's going to make us admit that? Kayo yun. Because you live in your neighborhoods and you know the way things really are. That is the power you have. Next slide. So then I came home and I was still with CNN, but what happened with the technology? So you can see the technology growing, right? So may cellphone na ngayon, broadcast. You can actually do satellite broadcasting. So CNN did the very first live shot out of the Philippines in the end of 1987. The very first live shot, and it cost tens of thousands of dollars for 10 minutes. By the time I left CNN in 2005, 2004, one 10-minute live shot was only $200 from the Philippines. So you can see that the times change. Next slide. That now is the satellite. You see at the bottom? That little disc is now, well, this was state of the art in 1998. So it was the first time CNN used this. We called it digital broadcasting, right? This was our digital news gathering unit, and this is the precursor for what you have now on your cell phone. Next slide. We went live with that everywhere. This is Veronica Pedrosa, a former colleague at CNN. She's now with Al Jazeera. This is on top of a cargo container in East Timor. This is the birth of a nation after thousands were killed fighting for a nation. Think about it like this. In the 30 years that I've been a journalist, the quality of a democracy is only as good as the quality of that society's journalists. That's why take it seriously. It's a mission. It is a calling. And it will test you physically. Hindi kayo matutulog. Mentally, kailangan talaga. Atom said clarity of thought, right? And then the last one is spiritually. The first time I saw 600 bodies buried in Ormoc in the first flash floods in the early 90s, I had to ask, is there a God? When you can smell 600 bodies being buried, or when you see so many people being killed, it makes you think. So it tests you spiritually. Next slide. Governments are wrong. This is training in biochemical warfare at CNN because we were all supposed to be deployed to Iraq. Eh, wala naman palang biochemical warfare ang Iraq, di ba? But you can see again what happened. The United States government said there was. They went to war in Iraq wrongly, and the journalists went along with it, and the journalists exposed it afterwards. By the time I turned 40, I decided I wanted to come home. And this was amazing because ABS-CBN is the largest network. And one of the things we were able to do was to realize that the gatekeeping powers of journalists are dead. When I was the head of that news group, we embraced you, citizen journalists, because you make journalists more powerful. At the same time, you will learn journalism and create a new type that scares the present journalists. Aminin nyo na mga journalists dyan, nakakatakot ang social media para sa mga journalists ngayon. Kasi wala na yung gatekeeping powers, which was the biggest thing. It used to be that if the traditional journalist said it didn't happen, it didn't happen. Pero ngayon, one tweet from one person can make the whole world change. You know when that happened? One man, the neighbor of Osama bin Laden in Abbottabad, Pakistan, took a shot of these choppers, tweeted it, and despite the fact that the United States said nothing was happening, it went viral. Osama bin Laden was killed, and that started with a tweet of one guy who had less than 700 followers on Twitter. Right? That's the power you have. Next, I moved away from traditional media in 2012. In 2012, we set up this thing called Rappler that took what we knew as traditional television, the crane, all of these cameras, and slammed it with digital. So that this phone is in your pocket and we can work with you. And if you look at it, you can still see some things connected. I report for CNN on my laptop, and look, they can still push it out on their traditional satellite, pero mas mahal sa kanila, sa akin, broadband lang eh. Pero sana mas maganda yung broadband natin, no? So, where we are right now is the old and the new coming together. In the past, ABS-CBN, GMA7, CNN, we would look to hire people we can train. Ngayon po, dapat, what Rappler does is to look for digital natives who can train us. You have a lot of power because you belong to the digital age. You will come of age and you will work for people who know less about it than you do. Use that power wisely. Next, I want to leave you with just 4 lessons from the Warzone. And these are things that I think are extremely important. The first, always, whether you become a journalist or not, maybe you won't, it's okay, because the skills of a journalist you can use anywhere. But you must always do this. This is what my mentor told me when I was your age, and I'm passing it along. Make the choice to learn. Why? Because the world is changing so fast. The phrase is creative destruction. The old world is being destroyed as fast as it's being created. And you are going to create it. Look how fast it's worked. Google just went public in 2004. What else happened in 2004? Facebook was formed in 2004. Now, Google has 3 billion searches every day. Facebook has 1.3 billion monthly users. More people than in our country, right? 2005, that was when YouTube began. YouTube is younger than you guys are. And 2006 was when Twitter began. 2007 was the first iPhone. 2011 was when WhatsApp began. And 2012, anong nangyari sa 2012? Rappler began. Sorry. Look how young things are. That means think about what you're doing because you can be the next Mark Zuckerberg, the guy who created Facebook. If you find a use, you can create a new business like Grab Taxi or Uber. The next, lesson 2. Don't be afraid. Embrace what you are most afraid of, because then you will be unbeatable. Most people run away from their fear, and all these technological changes are making journalists afraid. Why are we afraid? Because you on social media can say someone is wrong, biased, power groups can run after them. And the reaction most journalists have is to stay quiet. That should never be the case. And because you are on social media, I wish you great courage, because that is what your generation needs. You need courage to stand up for what you think is right, for your values, and to stand up when things are wrong. Remember, there's that saying, all it takes for evil to flourish is for good men and women to do nothing. So when you see something wrong, like corruption, even if it is your family, do something about it. Do not stay quiet. Again, I remember 1986, I was so young and I thought in 20 years the Philippines is going to be amazing. It wasn't quite, but your generation can make it happen. Next slide. So courage is really important. Just look at the stats. Let's go through this fast. Can you click, 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 click? Right? Just look at what Facebook can do. And raise your hand if you're on Facebook. Is that if you're on Facebook, can you tell me how many people here are on Facebook? Sandali, kunin ko yan ng letrato. That is amazing. That is about right. 94% of Filipinos who are on the internet are on Facebook. We are the largest Facebook market in the world. And look at that. More than 10 million photos uploaded every hour. In the hour you've been sitting there, 10 million photos have been uploaded. YouTube, 800 million monthly users upload over an hour of video every second. Oops, another 800 million monthly users uploaded an hour of video. And then the tweets, more than 500,000 tweets every day. Next, I want to show you something, and I want to show this to you. Show you your power. It took one Facebook post, 7 days, just 7 days, to get 100,000 to 150,000 people into Luneta Park to protest the pork barrel. It was the first time the Philippines had a peer-to-peer, internet-driven protest. And alam mo, pag pumunta naman kayo doon, medyo boring lang kasi walang programa. People didn't know what to do. But incredible. We mapped this. One of the things Rappler does is map it. Let's look at what it looks like. Magulo siyang tignan, di ba? That is the map of all of those people who went there who were tweeting. But you know what journalists do and what campus journalists should aim to do? What is our job? Our job is to give people the information so they can make decisions in their lives. Our job is not to tell them what to do, but to give them the information so that these communities become communities of action. Look at the next slide. This is the first hour the Pope landed in Manila. So this was his first hour. And if you look at it, look at the difference between the one before and now, right? Kitang-kita yung mga communities dyan. And you can tell that the large circles are large influencers. It's something called eigenvector centrality, but what it does, it's like Google PageRank. It ranks you and gives you a wider circle the more powerful you are. Let's click again. Let's zoom in. And you can see that at Pontifex, on the upper right side, that's the Pope's Twitter account. And then you can see the other Twitter accounts who are large. And here's what I want to show you. Rappler is a very small company. We are only, this first part of the stage, we're less than 100 people. ABS, if you can see on this end, has more than 1,000 people. And yet, because of you, because of your power, because you amplify, we can reach different, we're basically changing the power structure. Social media does that, and that is incredible. Let's click to the next slide. I'll give you the last two, and this is actually really amazing. The last two lessons are this. Number 3, the job of a journalist has always been, and will always be, to speak truth to power. Parang madaling sabihin yun, pero mahirap gawin yun, ha? And I'll give you some examples, some stories. First, of governments. Suharto, who was in power for 32 years in Indonesia, one time asked me, how long do you think I will stay in power? Bahasa Indonesian salita niya. So, yung bahasa Indonesia ko, hindi naman ganun kagaling. Pero, kaya ko naman. Sinabihan ko siya ng totoo, what I really thought, and it didn't please him. I was then the president of the the Foreign Correspondents Association, and I thought he was going to throw me out of the country. But I couldn't lie, and you know what it did? He listened, and he actually prepared for it. The next, Lee Kuan Yew, probably one of the greatest leaders we've had in Southeast Asia. He is such a control freak that before he begins his interview, right, he has an aide going in the room and taking a thermometer, and he'll test the thermometer in the room before he begins. And he doesn't begin the interview until it's 65 degrees Fahrenheit or 23 degrees Celsius, right, or 22. So, control freak siya. Lee Kuan Yew is probably one of the few people who he will grill you if you tell him what you think, but he thinks about it. And I think that's part of the reason he stayed in power. As long as he did, he was able to do a peaceful transition of power in Singapore, and why Singapore is now a first world country in Southeast Asia. Aquino. Let's go to Aquino, mother and son. I'll give you two little stories. President Cory Aquino was the antidote to a dictator, yes? That's the way it always was. Good versus evil. You know, nothing is ever that clear-cut. But President Aquino is also a woman. And the New York Times reporter did something so bad that she was so angry about it. What he did, he brought a tape recorder, he taped their first interview, and this was while she was still campaigning against President Marcos. His name is Seth Meygens. He's no longer there, so I can tell you about the story. But he taped it, and then he didn't do anything with the story but transcribe it. When you transcribe it and you read it, you realize how little she knew about governing. And that's okay, right? Because she still had the people's support. But President Aquino was so angry from 1985 all the way until the end. She never granted that reporter an interview. The New York Times na yun. So there are risks that you take when you tell truth to power, when you tell the public the truth. And then the last one is, well, this one is not so much her son, President Aquino. There are two things I'll say. One is the bus hostage crisis and Zamboanga. Because these are bookends. Mama Sapano, you can say, right? We must tell truth to power. Because if we allow our top leader to keep an illusion, the entire country goes off track. And it's best when you develop that courage at your age, because then nothing can stop you. I'll just tell you about Zamboanga. In Zamboanga, we were told on a Wednesday, so the actual hits were on a Saturday. On a Wednesday, we were told that these MNLF rebels were going to surrender, along with about 35 hostages. We ran it because I talked to both the MNLF leader and the police person who was accepting it. The government denied it. And I get a call the night before. Naka-camera pala lahat ito, no? Sabihin ko na sa inyo, nandito naman tayo eh. And, you know, I got a call from the palace saying, take it off. The president will deny it. Alam naman namin na totoo eh. So should we take it off or not? We didn't take it off. And that was important because 2 weeks later, the Philippine National Police said it was correct. But we took a lot of accusations and charges and we weathered it. You have to stay the course. Newsmakers, coup plotters in 2006. This one I say, and this is with ABS-CBN. In ABS-CBN at that time, I don't know if you remember Proclamation 1017, they basically were going to have a coup attempt in 2006. And the Scout Rangers had one of the ABS reporters with them, and they told us, guys, put us on live and we're gonna walk out. Sa Fort Bonifacio nga to. We're going to walk out and protest against the government if you put us on live first. Ibig sabihin, live feed nyo na, tapos kami, lalabas kami. Parang the soldiers needed courage of live TV coverage, right? Mahirap gawin yon. We said no. Ang sinabi namin, you go out and break with your command first, and then we'll put you on live. You see how thin that line is? They never did it because we never put them on live. That is the power a journalist still has. And then finally, corporations, advertisers, vested interests, people who want you to do what is good for their businesses. They will always try to influence you. And you say no because your job is to the public. Your power is borrowed from the public. And then finally, I'll leave you with this. Lee Kuan Yew told this to me when I was still in my 30s. And he said, you know, if you like to be liked, don't be a journalist. Because if you're a really good journalist, everyone will hate you. And that's what you aim for. Because you should always tell the truth as you see it at that moment in time. You will never be perfect because you are human. But if you find you're wrong, admit you're wrong, and be fair to the people you covered. Don't aim to be liked, aim to be respected. I'll leave you with these 4 lessons because to me, our country needs journalists like that. And it is your generation that will be the change. I mean, I've been waiting for it for 30 years. Please, 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 in my lifetime, please make it happen. There is still great power. Journalism, and I'll go to the last slide, journalism is still the same way. The purpose of journalism hasn't changed. Technology's only given us more power. There's no better time than now. And it really is all up to you. Thank you.